Good evening and welcome to SkullNet 7. My name is Patryk Witkowski and I'll be doing the news read for this evening. Starting off with a Ukraine update, we have day 855 of a conflict. A Russian has been charged with conspiring to hack and destroy computer systems and data in Ukraine and allied countries, including the US, the US Justice Department said on Wednesday. And they announced a $10 million reward for information. Before the invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, Amin Timovich Stagal, 22, who remains at large, targeted Kiev's government systems and data with no military-related role, the department alleged. Computer systems in the US and other countries that provided support to Ukraine were targeted later, it alleged. Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich went on trial behind closed doors in Ekaterinburg on Wednesday, 15 months after his arrest in the Russian city on espionage charges that he, his employer, and the US government vehemently deny. The 32-year-old was arrested in March 2023 while on a reporting trip to Ekaterinburg in the Ural Mountains, with authorities claiming, without offering any evidence, that he was gathering secret information for the US. The EU is expected to sign a security agreement with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Thursday, pledging to keep delivering weapons, military training, and other aid to Kiev for years to come. The agreement will lay out the EU's commitment to help Ukraine in 9 areas of security and defense policy, including arms deliveries, military training, defense industry, cooperation, and demining, according to a draft seen by Reuters. On Wednesday, European Union countries agreed a sanctions package against Belarus, according to EU diplomats. The sanctions are intended to try to close off a route to avoiding restrictions on Russia. President Volodymyr Zelensky made an unannounced visit to the Donetsk region in eastern Ukraine to bolster morale amongst troops, amid continuing advances by Russian forces. The Ukrainian president recorded a video address against the backdrop of Pokrovsk, a city with a pre-war population of about 61,000 that has experienced some of the most intense fighting during the 28-month-long full-scale invasion. Zelensky made the trip alongside Brig General Andrei Khinatov, the newly appointed commander of the Joint Forces. That's the Brigadier General Andrei Khinatov, the newly appointed commander of the Joint Forces. On Monday, 5 Lithuanian volunteer workers were wounded when their car came under fire in eastern Ukraine as they delivered the aid in Pokrovsk in Ukraine's Donetsk region. Representatives of Russia's and Ukraine's human rights offices held a meeting for the first time during an exchange of prisoners of war on Tuesday, Kiev said. The two countries have released 90 captured soldiers in a deal brokered by the United Arab Emirates, the latest in more than 50 prisoner exchanges that have taken place throughout the war. But it was the first time Russia had agreed to hold a direct meeting between human rights representatives during the exchange, according to Ukraine's Human Rights Commissioner Dmytro Lubinets. On Wednesday, NATO's 32 nations appointed outgoing Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte as the alliance's next head. Rutte will take over the Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg's on the 1st of October. Moving on to our Israel and Gaza latest, at least 37,765 Palestinians have been killed and 86,429 wounded in Gaza since October 7th, according to statements by the Gaza Health Ministry. President Biden's top aides have told Israel's defense minister, Yoav Gallant, that Washington would maintain a pause on a shipment of heavy bombs to Israel while the issue is under review, according to a report by the Reuters news agency. The report said discussions are continuing about the shipment of powerful munitions, which had been paused by President Biden in May over concerns they would result in more civilian Palestinians' deaths in Gaza. Israel's military ordered more of Gaza's civilians to move, instructing them to vacate a number of blocks in the Shujayeh neighborhood. Palestinian news agency Wafa reports that at least 5 people have been killed and more injured as Israel continues its bombardment of the Gaza Strip. A small number of children with cancer and other serious illnesses have been allowed to leave the Gaza Strip for treatment via the Kerem Shalom crossing. Palestinian news agency Wafa reports that Israeli forces detained 28 Palestinians in the occupied West Bank in the last 24 hours. Israel's military confirmed that 1 soldier was killed and 16 others injured in the Jenin refugee camp in the Israeli-occupied West Bank by an explosive device buried under a road which targeted their vehicles. In Israel, anti-government protests again blocked highways as demonstrators, including the families of some of those held hostage, demanded Benjamin Netanyahu's government strike a deal for their release and hold elections. Israel has started to deploy extra troops to the northern border in preparation for potential full-scale war with a powerful Lebanese group, Hezbollah. Troops under the banner of the Northern Command conducted a major training exercise drilling extreme scenarios in the area on Wednesday, overseen partly by the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has warned that Israel's military is capable of taking Lebanon back to the Stone Age in any war with Hezbollah. Hezbollah claimed to have targeted an Israeli Navy base near Rosh Hanikra with explosive-laden drones. Syria's national news agency reported that 2 people were killed inside Syria by an Israeli strike, and there were reports of several strikes by Israel inside Lebanon, one of which reportedly killed a target on a motorcycle. A ship heading for Dammam in Saudi Arabia reported being struck in the Red Sea, where Yemen's Houthis have been attacking ships they claim are linked with Israel. For our general election coverage, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak posted a tweet today saying, "Don't surrender your family's future to Labour," alongside an image of people with their backs turned and arms up in the air as if lined up to a wall by an invading army. The response online in the comments has been mostly negative. Conservatives' Kevin Hollenrake, a business minister, told broadcasters he had bet on his party to win a parliamentary majority some months ago. Asked whether he had bet on a Tory victory, Hollenrake told Times Radio, "Yes, I did. Not my seat. I think that would be wrong." Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross has said that voting for Reform or other parties in key seats around Scotland will only help the SNP win more MPs. With a week to go until polling, he sought to rally pro-union voters to the Tories in the seats seen as battlegrounds between his and John Swinney's party. Labour Shadow Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds has said the party wants to run a government, not a Netflix series, as he defended his party's decision to run a relatively surprise-free election campaign. Reynolds said Labour's offer of stability and predictable policy would be valuable for businesses. In a speech today to industry leaders at the British Chambers of Commerce. The Gambling Commission is investigating instances where confidential information may have been used to bet on the timing of a general election. A number of Metropolitan Police officers are being investigated. This morning, Keir Starmer said this showed why Rishi Sunak should have acted earlier, calling out a lack of leadership and rule-bending. That's Keir Starmer calling that Rishi Sunak should have acted earlier, calling a general election, as delaying it so long was a lack of leadership and showed rule-bending. For the Liberal Democrats, their candidate for the Stockport constituency of Hazel Grove, Lisa Smart, has apologized for doorbell camera footage of her making a contentious comment, which she explains as a joke. The footage shows Lisa Smart out door knocking, and when the door gets answered, the person residing inside explained that she voted in Liverpool and not in that constituency. Lisa Smart responded to this, saying, "Understood, so you're just here nicking stuff?" Labour candidate Claire Vibert described the comment as a casual slur towards people from Liverpool. Sir Ed Davey has called for the winner of a general election to pass an emergency budget to fix healthcare. The Liberal Democrat leader made the demand while campaigning in Marple, Stockport, after attending a pottery painting event in the town. The SNP has urged the Bank of England to cut interest rates, as the European Central Bank has done, following news that about 3 million households are set to see their mortgage payments rise in the next 2 years. SNP's David Linden has said Scottish families should not have to pay the price for Westminster's failure, including Liz Truss's mini-budget. SNP Deputy Leader Keith Brown has called for the removal of the Aberdeen South Labour candidate after Takir Malik was caught in video footage saying that the Labour Party, quote, didn't bother at all, end quote, in 2019 in an attempt to let Tories win against the SNP in that constituency. After a British Chambers of Commerce report stating that British EU trade is not working, the SNP's Europe and EU Ascension spokesperson, Alan Smith, responded by saying, "Experts and business leaders are crying out for a return to the EU single market because they know all too well the damage." Adding that on the 4th of July, the choice is clear: vote SNP to reject Brexit and secure a future made in Scotland for Scotland. At First Minister's Questions today, First Minister John Swinney said that the Institute for Fiscal Studies had highlighted a conspiracy of silence about the funding of public services among the Conservatives and Labour plans. Labour leader Anas Sarwar has attacked the Scottish Government for NHS failings, waiting times in particular, while Scottish Lib Dem leader Alex Cole-Hamilton went on to complain about GP waiting times and cuts of mental health funding. John Swinney told Sarwar he wanted an honest conversation about the financial support required for the NHS, and Sarwar said he looked forward to having just that on the SNP's health record of the 2026 Holyrood elections. New polling out this morning suggests the gap between Labour and the SNP has narrowed. Sorry. Companies linked to Tory donors given £8.4 billion in public contracts since 2016. The Guardian is reporting that companies linked to Conservative donors have collectively received £8.4 billion in public money since 2016, analysis shows. More than 150 times what the party has received in support. The report reveals that government spending and political donation records show key contributors have given £53.7 million to the Tory party since January 2015, while controlling firms that have received billions in government and NHS contracts over 8 years. An anti-corruption charity has called for a ban on parties accepting donations from companies with public contracts, which would bring the UK in line with the US and other countries in Europe. There is no suggestion that the individuals or companies named have broken the law or committed any wrongdoing. But the analysis shines a light on the high value of contracts handed to political donors and raises questions about the risk of conflict of interest. The donors include Frank Hester, whose company, the Phoenix Partnership, has received £427.7 million from the NHS and Department for Health from the NHS and Department for Health since 2016. And who has donated £15.3 million to the Conservatives since 2023. The businessman, mired in a row about comments condemned as racist and misogynistic, gave a Conservative Party £5 million in January. Also on the list, the JCB Service, which donated almost £3.3 million between May 2017 and September last year. Companies within the same corporate grouping have directly received 566 566,161 pounds. £566,161 between April 2016 and April this year. Also on the list, Richard Harpin, who has donated £2.7 million between May 2016 and March 2024, including a donation from a company he has significant control over, Growth Partner LLP. His firms, Harmony Bridge Limited and Liberty House, HULL Limited, received a combined 730,000. That's via Liberty House Hull Limited received a combined 730,980. 730,680 pounds from Homes England between May 2019 and August 2021. Dr. Selva Pankaj, who has donated £727,000 to the Conservatives since November 2015. His company, FBGB Limited, formerly known as Fortress Properties, received £4,733,336 from Homes England between November 2020 and August 2023. The list of donors receiving public money includes many developers and property industry firms. Since 2016, 124 donor-linked companies have received more than £1 billion from Homes England, the body that funds new affordable housing. Previous analysis of donations found that at least 10% of donations received by the Conservative Party since 2010 has come from people or companies linked to the properties industry. Some donors, such as Frank Hester, may have started donating money after their companies were awarded contracts in the public sector. Others will have been donors before their companies were paid by the government. All of the donors named by The Guardian have been contacted for comment. Our next story is BP halts new offshore wind projects and rolls back on plans to cut oil and gas production. The head of BP has imposed a hiring freeze and halted new offshore wind projects in an apparent attempt to placate investors who are unhappy with the oil company's green targets. Maury Auchincloss, BP's former finance chief, took up the role of CEO in January after the shock departure of his predecessor, Bernard Looney, with a promise to focus on delivering value for shareholders. Looney has committed BP to some of the industry's greenest climate goals, and the decision to slow BP's green ambitions has stoked concerns that Looney's plan to move the company away from fossil fuels with a pledge to become a net zero company by 2050 or sooner is about to be derailed. BP has come under pressure from shareholders over its green targets because some renewable projects have proved more costly than expected, and profits from oil and gas have soared after Russia's invasion of Ukraine more than 2 years ago. In response, the company set out plans earlier this year to cut oil and gas production by just 25% between 2019 and 2030, well short of its previous target of a 40% reduction over the same timeframe. Greenpeace UK said BP's plans were disappointing, but sadly unsurprising. Ariba Hamid, its joint executive director, said, Murray Auchincloss has had a chance to build on his predecessor's legacy and become part of a solution to the climate crisis, rather than its harbinger. Instead, BP is following other fossil fuel majors by abandoning renewables and doubling down on oil and gas in the hopes of a quick buck. Auchincloss is reportedly looking at investing in the possible reportedly looking at investing and possibly acquiring new oil and gas assets to strengthen BP's existing operations, particularly in the Gulf of Mexico and the shale basins acquired from the Anglo-Australian miner BHP in Texas. Earlier this month, BP's rival Shell set out its plans to scale back its green growth ambitions, reducing the number of staff working on low carbon solutions by about 200 roles while shifting the focus towards high profit oil projects and expanding its gas businesses. Alice Harrison, the head of a fossil fuels campaigning at Global Witness, said, "Since the energy crisis began earning BP record-breaking profits, it has shown its true colors, slashing its climate targets and renewables investment in favor of earning a quick buck from increased fossil fuel production." Over the past 4 years, BP has built up a sizable portfolio of offshore wind projects capable of generating 9.5 gigawatts of energy in total in the UK, Germany, and the US. In the 9.5 gigawatts of energy in total in the UK, Germany, and the US that are still yet to be developed. That is the BP's portfolio of offshore wind plans. For the next story, we've got a new single code of practice published by private parking organizations. The BPA, British Parking Association, and the IPC, the International Parking Association, have today published the private parking sector single code of practice to be used across the entire private parking sector. This new single code will raise standards and deliver greater transparency and consistency for the benefit of motorists. The new sector single code does the following: introduces an appeals charter, creating clear parameters for motorists to appeal against a parking charge. It also mandates a 10-minute grace period for motorists, alongside providing consistent rules for private parking or operators, and requires clear signage to help motorists navigate parking on private land. The single line code also ensures the protection of the most vulnerable in society, with no decrease to the deterrent for abuse of blue badge bays or those who choose to park selfishly, putting their own convenience above the needs or rights of others. The plan also maintains a cap on the parking charge at £100, reduced to £60 if paid within 14 days. Private parking operators will implement the new single code by the 1st of October 2024, with all existing sites needing to be updated by December 2026. Politicians and motorist groups have been critical of private parking businesses for unreasonable fees and misleading signage. Parking companies issued 9.7 million tickets between April and December last year. Motoring organizations have responded by saying that the proposed code falls far short of the standards required and are calling for government legislation. A bill to enable the introduction of a legislation-backed code of conduct, which included halving the cap on tickets for most parking offences to £50 among other measures, received royal assent in March 2019. Legislation was drawn in 2022 after a legal challenge from private parking companies. Later today, Biden and Trump preparing for head-to-head debate. It could be the moment when a rematch that few seem to want finally comes to life. Like two aging prize fighters, Joe Biden and Donald Trump will enter the arena of political bloodsport this evening to resume a verbal sparring bout that will revive memories of the ugly exchanges when the two debated face-to-face 4 years ago. A CNN studio in Atlanta will host the first presidential debate of the campaign between the same two candidates who contested the last election, which Biden won. With more than 4 months to go until polling day in November, it is the earliest in any U.S. presidential campaign that a debate between the two main candidates has ever been staged. While some see the timing as premature, it could provide a chance to open up a contest that has become overshadowed by, among other things, Trump's recent felony conviction, as well as assorted with legal travails, new word for me, legal travails, that see him facing 54 criminal charges for trying to overturn the last election and for retaining classified documents. Knife-edge polls indicate a race essentially tied, with a national polling average for May and June showing the candidates at 46% each. Polls in 7 key battleground states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina, give Trump a narrow advantage, though usually within a margin of error. For non-Trump supporters, it is a troubling scenario, given he incited a violent insurrection against the U.S. Capitol to stop Congress certifying the results of a 2020 election that he refused to accept that he lost, despite Biden winning by more than 7 million votes. Trump's Achilles heel and the possible key to Biden's salvation may lie in arguably the most startling domestic change to have happened since the last election. The U.S. Supreme Court ruling in 2022 overturning the landmark Roe v. Wade decision that guaranteed women's rights to abortion. That advantage was illustrated in a campaign video Biden released on Monday that blamed Trump personally for the court's abortion ruling, pointing out that the decision had depended on the votes of 3 conservative justices appointed by him when he was president. There will be no studio audience for the debate, and to prevent the candidates speaking over each other, their microphones will be muted while the other is speaking, which I'm sure will come in very handy during the debate. Bolivia's president sees off attempted coup. Bolivia's president, Luis Arce, I hope I'm saying it right, Luis Arce, appears to have seen off an attempt to topple his government after a dramatic afternoon in which heavily armed troops, seemingly commanded by a top army general, stormed the government palace before beating a retreat and seeing their alleged leader detained. On Wednesday afternoon, Arce urged citizens to take to the streets to defend the country's democracy from an apparent coup attempt, after troops seized control of a central square in La Paz, which houses government buildings. Arce said the following: "We need the Bolivian people to mobilize and organize themselves against the coup d'etat and in favor of democracy," he said in a video message filmed at the Great House of the People, the official presidential residence at Bolivia's de facto capital of La Paz. Flanked by members of his cabinet, Arce declared, "We cannot allow, once again, attempted coups to claim Bolivian lives. Long live the people of Bolivia. Long live democracy." The ministers shouted, thrusting their left fists into the air, "Long live our president, Luis Arce." Oh, Arce. Arce. We can retract all of my miserable pronunciations on that earlier. Former President Evo Morales has sounded the alarm as troubling images of the disturbances spread on social media. Morales urged supporters to take to the streets and block roads to oppose the alleged coup attempt, which he blamed on the recently sacked army commander, General Juan Jose Zuniga, who was reported to have been removed from his post on the eve of Wednesday's turmoil. The newspaper Los Tiempos quoted the head of Bolivia's army as saying that Arce remained president for the time being, although as the hours passed, Arce seemed to reassert control. The president confronted Zuniga as he entered the palace and was filmed instructing the general to stand his troops down. "I am your captain. Obey my orders," Arce said. By late afternoon, Arce had named a new military high command, and reports suggested troops and armored vehicles were withdrawing from Plaza Murillo in La Paz's historic center, where the seemingly botched rebellion had played out. The new army chief, Jose Wilson Sanchez Valequez, Jose Wilson Sanchez Valequez appeared on state television alongside Arce and ordered the troops who had hit the streets to return to barracks. As he spoke, the president's supporters chanted, "Democracy, democracy, democracy." By the evening, there were reports that Zuniga had been detained on suspicion of the crimes of terrorism and arming uprising at the entrance to the General Staff headquarters in La Paz. Footage showed him being driven away in a white police pickup truck, and later on, police brought him to a press conference in handcuffs. Our next story is the fall in Scottish agriculture greenhouse gas emissions. Scotland's chief statistician has released detailed figures on agricultural emissions. Latest results show that in 2022, total agriculture emissions fell by 3% to 7.7 MTCO-2E. Total agriculture emissions have been in a long-term decline since the baseline period in 1990. Emissions from agriculture have fallen by 12%. In more recent years, agriculture emissions had been relatively stable, ranging from 7.9 to 8.0 MTCO2E between 2016 and 2021. The suckler beef subsector has the largest share of Scottish agricultural emissions. That's the suckler beef subsector. In 2022, emissions from suckler beef were 3.2 MTCO2E, 41% of agricultural emissions. From 1990 to 2022, suckler beef emissions fell by 0.6 MTCO2E, 17%. This was the largest absolute reduction across the agricultural subsector. Emissions from sheep and dairy beef subsectors have also fallen by 17% from the baseline period. The report also includes emissions and nitrogen use estimates for the average Scottish farm in 2022 to 23. Nitrogen balance, the difference between total nitrogen input and output, fell by 28% for the average farm from 2021 to 2022 and 2022 to 2023, and resulted in increases for nitrogen use efficiency estimates. These trends were seen for most farm types, but a larger decrease in nitrogen input from fertilizer was seen in cereal farms. The world's largest interactive video game exhibition opens in Edinburgh this weekend. The world's largest interactive exhibition of the cultural and history of video games opens at the National Museum of Scotland this weekend. Game On brings together over 100 playable games spanning 50 years. It features iconic characters from Space Invaders to Mario and highlights Scotland's role as a pioneer and world leader in video game development. Game On presents Scotland as home to some of the most innovative and influential game makers, including Rockstar Games, creators of the Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption series, Objects from the developer's archive will be displayed for the first time, including limited edition merchandise and a key to Liberty City, awarded to players who completed 100% of Grand Theft Auto 4 within 1 week of the game's release in 2008. Only 500 keys were ever made, or collectibles of this kind were ever made. The exhibition reveals the story of Scottish gaming from its roots in Dundee in the 1980s, with the manufacture of the ZX Spectrum computer to emerging talents such as Sad Owl Studios, whose game Viewfinder was awarded Best British Game at the BAFTA Game Awards 2024. Visitors will also discover the important role Scottish studio 4J Studios played in making Minecraft a global phenomenon. Game On is curated and sorry, I'm having a little trouble with the script right now. Let me just find my place again. National first. A Game On is curated and something by Barbican Immersive. Curated and something by Barbican Immersive. Curated and toured by Barbican Immersive. I was missing the T in the script. Sorry, guys. The exhibition examines the creative and technological advances that have established gaming as a new art form. The National Museum of Scotland was the exhibition's very first touring venue in 2002. The Game On has since been visited by over 5 million people of all ages in 25 cities across the world. The exhibition is organized in themed sections, exploring hardware formats such as handheld to home consoles to arcade machines, as well as wider cultural aspects such as the links between music, film, and gaming. A program of public events will support the exhibition, including a museum relaxed viewing for those with sensory needs and family-focused activities to inspire video gaming's next generation of creators. Tickets are available to book at nms.ac.uk/gameon. Thank you very much, as that does wrap us up for this evening. Before I go, I do want to remind you that at Broadcasting Scotland, we depend on the generosity of our supporters. Our programs will always be free to view. However, if you can afford the £5 a month, please consider becoming a Broadcasting Scotland supporter. To everyone who has donated and to everyone who has signed up to make a regular monthly payment, thank you very much. Our focus must now move to securing the future of independent broadcasting for Scotland by growing our subscriber base and regular funding. I've been Patryk Witkowski, and I hope you enjoyed our newsread for this evening. Goodbye, and thank you for watching.